Psalm 45 is a really special psalm. It's a psalm that is all praise, it's all celebration, and it's all set in the context of the wedding of the King. Okay, so as you see here, as it starts in the top line, it tells us that it's a love song. That it's a gushing, overflowing, gushing sounds negative, I mean it positively, an overflowing kind of delight coming out of the writer. My heart overflows with a pleasing theme. I address my verses to the King. My tongue is like the pen of a ready scribe. I'm ready to describe what's going on. I'm ready to celebrate the King. It's all about him. And so it kind of launches in very descriptive terms. You are the most handsome of the sons of men. Grace is poured upon your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. Here the King is being celebrated and lifted up for the excellence of who he is. Verses 3-5 speak of his valor as a warrior. Gird your sword on your thigh, O mighty one, in your splendor and majesty. In your majesty ride out victoriously for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness. Let your right hand teach you awesome deeds. Your arrows are sharp. In the heart of the King's enemies, the people fall under you. And then after speaking of his valor, it talks about his reign as king. Your throne, O God. Now that's an interesting word, isn't it? Using the label God for a human king. We'll come back to that. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of your kingdom is a scepter of righteousness. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. Your robes are all fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. From ivory palaces, stringed instruments make you glad. Daughters of kings are among your ladies of honor. At your right hand stands the queen in gold of Ophir. So it's moving from his reign to his wedding. But this is high language, isn't it? Some of this language here seems more than you're expecting. If this is just a psalm describing a king back in the Old Testament day, sure, it could get a little bit exaggerated, but calling him God. Yes, the kings were anointed by God, but it's interesting in this context to have God, your God, has anointed you, oil of gladness. We're talking about him being Christed, anointed, messiahed, if you like. That's not good English, but you get the point. You see, here's the thing. When this psalm is read, it should stir your heart. The theme should be overwhelming, overpowering almost, to try to picture the wonder of this king. And you look around and look around the Old Testament, check out the kings of Israel, and then Israel and Judah. Does anybody live up to this? No. Even the golden age of David and Solomon, all sorts of issues in that time. What about since? What about today? We live in a world with all sorts of national leaders, kings and presidents and prime ministers. Most of them make us despair, whether they're overtly evil or inherently untrustworthy or just unable to function normally or just leaving questions in our minds. As much as the world likes to celebrate leaders and sort of make them something they're not, I think we all realize that they all fall short. It's not wrong. In fact, I think it's spot on to allow Psalm 45 to push you beyond the King of Israel to the ultimate King of Israel. In fact, Hebrews 1 quotes these verses here to identify the King as Jesus himself, Jesus the Christ. He's somebody that can be called God. He's somebody that is anointed, the Christ. He is somebody that fits this description. But what about later on in the psalm? If we drop down to verses 13-15, for example, where it's talking about the king on his wedding day. All glorious is the princess in her chamber with robes interwoven with gold. In many-colored robes she is led to the king with her virgin companions following behind her. With joy and gladness they are led along as they enter the palace of the king. Is it appropriate to use romantic, marital language for a psalm that's ultimately pointing us to Jesus? Well, actually, yes, it is. Because that's the theme of the entire Bible. From beginning to end, God is at work, calling out a bride for his glorious son. You can see it. Psalm 2 hints at that. Genesis 2 and 3, right the way through So many references, so many places we could go. Ephesians 5 being the kind of ultimate unveiling of that mystery. But yes, Jesus is the groom. And that's the best news of all, isn't it? That's the thing that should most thrill our hearts and thrill our souls. And so what do we take from Psalm 45? Well, first of all, when we're reading it, we need to allow it to point us to its ultimate fulfillment. This is speaking of Jesus in the ultimate sense. This is the whole trajectory of the whole of Scripture. And then how do we apply that? Ponder the wonder of being part of the bride of Christ. The wonder of being united spiritually to him. I hope that Psalm 45, as you read it, will thrill you, that it will cause your imagination to stir. And I would encourage you, share it with others. And share it, highlights in the comments below. Allow Psalm 45 to resonate in your heart, especially as you see all that's happening in the world today. All the leaders that are letting us down. What a beautiful thing it is to know Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ, our God, our groom. Thank you.